5 luxury vehicles rolled up to the entrance in perfect formation, 2 Bentleys, a Lamborghini, a Maybach, and at the center, a midnight violet Rolls-Royce Phantom. Guests turned, blinking under the flash of headlights. The valet froze, the photographers leaned forward, something extraordinary was happening. The driver of the Rolls stepped out, opened the rear door, and the crowd gasped. A woman emerged in a royal purple gown cascaded around her like liquid silk, diamonds whispering at her throat. Every camera turned. "Who is that?" someone breathed. Then a reporter's voice broke through the chaos. "That's Dr. Maya Jordan Bennett, founder of Pinnacle Financial Technologies." The name rippled through the room. A billionaire. A legend. The woman Forbes called the future of global finance. Inside, Jonathan Carter Whitmore IV froze mid-conversation. The glass in his hand trembled. He turned, and saw her walking through the doors. His cleaning lady. The one he called girl. The one he'd invited tonight to humiliate in front of 600 of New York's wealthiest. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. She wasn't supposed to look like this, composed, radiant, powerful. She was supposed to look small, grateful, invisible. Instead, she walked straight toward him, eyes locked on his. "Good evening, Mr. Whitmore," she said evenly, voice rich and calm. The color drained from his face. What are you doing here?" Her smile was polite, sharp as a blade. "I was invited. Remember?" Cameras flashed. Gasps rippled through the guests. Power shifted so suddenly it was almost audible. She glanced at the massive banner behind him, Whitmore Foundation Gala, empowering urban youth. The irony wasn't lost on her. He stammered for words, but none came. His wife whispered, "Jonathan, who is she?" He couldn't answer. Because in that instant, the truth began to dawn, she hadn't come to be mocked. She'd come for justice. Maya turned slightly toward the press, her expression serene. "Let me tell you," she said softly, "how we got here." And just like that, the story rewound 4 months earlier, to the hum of a vacuum cleaner in a quiet office corridor, a blue uniform under fluorescent light, and a woman whose brilliance hid beneath latex gloves and humility. Her name tag read Maya J. Her eyes burned with purpose. And the empire that thought it owned her was about to crumble. Before we go back, let us know where you are watching from. And subscribe because tomorrow, I've got something extra special for you. 4 months earlier, no one in the gleaming Whitmore Global Holdings tower spared a second glance at the woman in the blue uniform pushing a cleaning cart down the executive hallway. Her shoes squeaked faintly against the marble, her head bowed as she polished door handles that cost more than her monthly paycheck. They saw a worker. She saw a chessboard. Dr. Maya Jordan Bennett had spent years building empires from scratch. Her company, Pinnacle Financial Technologies, had revolutionized access to global markets for ordinary people. At 41, she was worth $4.7 billion and ranked among Forbes' most powerful women. But beneath that number beat the memory of her grandmother, Lottie Mae Jordan, who scrubbed floors in other people's homes until her knuckles split. "Never let anyone's disrespect define your worth," Grandma used to say. "Some folk see your uniform before they see your soul. That's their blindness, not your shame." So when Maya discovered that Whitmore Global, one of the firms her company planned to quietly acquire, had a history of discrimination and wage abuse, she didn't send investigators. She went herself. Her board had thought she'd lost her mind. Her team had begged her not to. But Maya was resolute. "If I'm going to own a company that mistreats its workers," she said, "then I'm going to see it with my own eyes first." And so, under a new identity, Maya Jordan, cleaning staff, she applied through a contracting agency and began scrubbing the very offices she planned to take over. The first day, she arrived before dawn. Her uniform was baggy, her accent softened into southern lilt, her posture curved to seem smaller. She'd practiced it, humility as armor. By 8 a.m., she was invisible. Jonathan Whitmore walked past her twice that morning without acknowledgement. The third time, he snapped his fingers and said, "You missed a spot, girl." Her hand tightened around the rag, but her smile didn't falter. "Yes, sir," she murmured. Inside, she recorded every word on the small mic sewn into her collar. Each evening, after leaving the building, she'd step into her chauffeured car, straighten her spine, and speak into her phone, day one complete. Initial impressions confirm toxic hierarchy. Documentation ongoing. Her double life began. By day, she scrubbed. By night, she led. She reviewed acquisition documents with her CTO, Dr. James Mitchell, strategized with Rachel Silverstein, her lawyer and friend, and coordinated with her chief of staff, Simone Charles, who managed the undercover operation from a secure office uptown. Marcus, her head of security, insisted on tracking her every movement. "You shouldn't be down there alone, Maya," he'd grumble. "That man's got a temper." "I know," she'd reply quietly. "That's why I'm here." The mission wasn't just business, it was generational. For every Carmen, every Kwame, every nameless worker ignored by power. Her grandmother's legacy demanded it. Weeks passed. She memorized the rhythm of the building, the arrogance in the air-conditioned hallways, the laughter spilling from the executive dining room. She learned where the security cameras didn't reach and where voices carried through vents. Her notebook grew thick with observations. 1. Manager uses racial slurs when speaking of janitorial staff. 2. Carmen reprimanded for being too emotional after false accusation. 3. Kwame assigned dangerous maintenance tasks without safety gear. 4. Jonathan boasts about diversity optics. Each note was a weapon waiting for the right moment. Sometimes, late at night when the building emptied, she'd sit in the supply closet, remove her gloves, and just breathe. The grime on her hands felt like a connection, to her grandmother's struggle, to her mother's perseverance. She whispered to herself, "This isn't disguise. This is remembrance." Yet it wasn't easy. There were moments she nearly broke character, the day Jonathan threw his coffee mug near her feet because his reflection wasn't spotless enough, or when he told a joke that used a word her grandmother had been called by men who spat on her porch. She wanted to scream. To drop the rag and reveal who she was. But she'd inhale, count to 10, and remember, patience is power in disguise. One night, she joined a few other staff members in the break room. The air smelled faintly of bleach and exhaustion. Carmen, the head cleaner, smiled wearily. "You're new, huh? Don't let him get to you, Mija. He likes making folks feel small." Maya nodded. "I can handle small," she said softly, "as long as small don't forget how to rise." Kwame laughed under his breath. "You talk different," he said. "Not like the rest of us." "Maybe I read too many books," she replied, and they chuckled, thinking nothing of it. But Carmen watched her longer than the rest. There was something in Maya's eyes she couldn't quite name, dignity that didn't bow, even when her body did. Every Friday, Maya sent encrypted voice memos to her team. Evidence of discrimination growing stronger. Whitmore arrogant, predictable. Expansion plan proceeding. Her company was quietly buying Whitmore stock through shell subsidiaries. By the time anyone noticed, she'd control a majority. Still, every insult, every humiliation left a mark. Some nights, when she removed her uniform and looked at her reflection, she barely recognized herself. Not because of what she wore, but because of the restraint it demanded. In her penthouse, surrounded by glass walls and skyline lights, she'd think of her grandmother in a tiny kitchen decades earlier, saying, "Baby, one day, our stories will walk into the rooms they tried to keep us out of." And Maya would whisper back, "That day's coming, Grandma." 4 months undercover. 4 months of degradation, documentation, and discipline. Until one afternoon, Jonathan Whitmore called her into his office and said, "I've got a special invitation for you." He smiled that condescending smile, the one that always made her skin crawl. And she knew, instantly, that the endgame was near. The day after the special invitation, the tension around Maya seemed to thicken. Word spread fast through the building, the CEO himself had spoken to the cleaning lady. Some laughed. Some whispered warnings. But no one suspected the truth. Jonathan Whitmore had an audience that morning. A cluster of executives crowded around his office like sycophants orbiting a sun. Maya entered quietly, pushing her cart, her gloved hands steady even as her pulse quickened. "Ah, there she is," Jonathan announced. "Everyone, meet Maya, right? Our little miracle worker." Laughter rippled. "Yes, sir," she replied softly. He leaned back in his chair. "We were just discussing humility. Something people in your line of work must have plenty of, I imagine." Maya smiled faintly. "Humility keeps us grounded, sir. Some of us learn it early." His expression faltered, just for a second. But then he smirked. "Well, good. Maybe you can teach that to my interns. They act like they're too good to get their hands dirty." One of the executives, a thin woman in pearls, chuckled. "Maybe we should make her the motivational speaker at the gala," she quipped. The room erupted in laughter. Jonathan grinned. "Now that is an idea." Maya kept her eyes down, hiding the fire building behind them. Every word was a test, not of her patience, but of her purpose. As she turned to leave, Jonathan's voice followed her. "Oh, and Maya, make sure you polish the glass tables in the conference room again. We've got guests coming. I'd like them to see their reflection, clearly." "Yes, sir," she murmured, and closed the door behind her. That afternoon, she overheard them joking in the lounge. "I swear, half these people don't even speak proper English," one said. Another replied, "But they're cheap labor. They should be grateful we even hire them." Then Jonathan's unmistakable baritone, "Grateful, yes. That's the word. Some of them forget where they belong." Maya froze behind the half-closed door, rag still in her hand. The words hit like stones thrown at history, the same tone, the same disdain her grandmother had endured decades before. She wanted to burst in, reveal who she was, make them choke on their arrogance. But she stayed silent. The recorder in her pocket captured every word. Later that week, she was cleaning the executive floor restroom when two interns walked in, laughing loudly. "Did you hear? The cleaning lady got invited to the gala," one said between giggles. "Please. You think she even owns a dress? She'll probably show up in her uniform, bless her heart." Maya's heart thudded, but she didn't flinch. Instead, she calmly wrung out her cloth and continued wiping the counter. When they noticed her reflection in the mirror, one flushed red. "Oh, sorry, we didn't mean." Maya met her eyes through the glass and said evenly, "Yes, you did. But that's all right. Truth has a way of showing itself." The girls fell silent and hurried out. The following Monday, Jonathan called her into the conference room again. "I've got something for you," he said with a patronizing smile. He handed her a gold envelope. Inside, embossed lettering read, "You are cordially invited to the Whitmore Foundation Gala." Maya looked up slowly. "Sir, I—" "Oh, come now," he interrupted. "It's just for fun. You people always like a little attention, don't you? Think of it as a reward for good cleaning." The room laughed. Cameras flashed. A few executives exchanged smug glances. Maya smiled faintly. "Thank you, sir. I'll be there." And with that, she turned, her face unreadable, her dignity intact. What they didn't see was the flicker in her eyes, a storm gathering strength. That evening, she met her team in her private study uptown. Her assistant Simone had already compiled the audio and visual evidence. "It's enough to destroy him," she said, voice low. Maya nodded. "Good. Then it's time." Marcus frowned. "You sure about this? Showing up at his event, surrounded by his people?" "Yes," Maya said quietly. "He invited the cleaning lady. Let him meet the woman who owns the company he stands on." She picked up the gold envelope and studied it for a long moment. "He thinks this is his stage," she whispered. "But it's about to become mine." The next morning, she returned to work as if nothing had changed. Jonathan passed her in the hallway, smirking. "Don't forget your invitation," he said. "I wouldn't dream of it," she replied. And as he walked away, Maya straightened her shoulders and whispered under her breath, "You'll regret every word you've ever spoken." The game was almost over. She had endured their cruelty, absorbed their venom, and gathered the proof. Now, all that was left was the unveiling. For the next 2 weeks, the Whitmore building buzzed with anticipation for the Foundation Gala, the annual event where Jonathan Whitmore flaunted his wealth under the guise of philanthropy. Banners were printed, speeches rehearsed, and invitations dispatched to the city's elite. And somewhere between those glittering plans and quiet corners, the cleaning lady was orchestrating her revenge. Maya moved through the office with the same quiet grace, polishing, dusting, smiling when spoken to. But under that calm, every step was deliberate. Every look calculated. Every recorded word filed into an evidence folder that could dismantle empires. Her team met in secret at her penthouse, the skyline burning gold outside her windows. Marcus leaned forward over the table, voice low. "Everything's ready. The files are secured, the legal team is on standby. Once you give the word, Whitmore Global is yours." Maya nodded. "Not yet. The timing has to be perfect." Rachel, her attorney, frowned. "You're risking everything by going there in person. We could expose him publicly, press conference, financial report, even a federal investigation." Maya met her gaze. "No. It's not enough to destroy his business. I want to expose his character. He's built a culture that humiliates people like my grandmother and me. That needs to fall in front of witnesses." Simone, her chief of staff, smiled softly. "You want him to see who you really are." "Exactly." Maya's voice steadied. "He wanted to humiliate a cleaner in front of his guests. He'll end up humiliating himself in front of the world." The next day, she entered the building as usual, recording her final days undercover. Jonathan was in rare form, boasting about his upcoming keynote speech, promising record donations, and casually mocking the low-level staff who'd never understand the pressures of leadership. Maya cleaned his office one last time, carefully folding his discarded newspaper. The headline read, "Whitmore Foundation Gala TO Honor Diversity and Inclusion." The irony nearly made her laugh. Before leaving, she looked around his office, walls lined with photos of handshakes, awards, and carefully curated smiles. The same man who preached equality in public and degraded his workers in private. She whispered, "This is the last floor you'll ever stand on as king." That night, she finalized her transformation. Her stylist, Elena, laid out options: bold crimson, deep emerald, or the royal purple gown that shimmered like twilight. Maya touched the fabric, feeling its weight. "Purple," she said. "For power. For purpose." Elena smiled. "You're sure you want to make an entrance like this?" "Oh, I don't plan to make an entrance," Maya said. "I plan to make history." She spent hours rehearsing her remarks, not a speech, but a statement. A truth that would pierce the air like lightning. Her tone had to be steady, her words sharp but calm. When Marcus handed her the final dossier, a folder containing the documented racism, harassment, and falsified financial records, she didn't even glance at it. She'd memorized every page. "Deliver copies to the press," she instructed. "Seal them until my signal." He nodded. "Understood." On the morning of the gala, she stood by her window, overlooking the city that once dismissed her as invisible. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, "They can't see what they refuse to understand, baby. So you show them." Maya whispered, "I will, Grandma. Tonight, they'll see everything." Her team gathered one final time before she left. Rachel adjusted her diamond bracelet, the one Maya's grandmother once pawned to pay rent. It gleamed under the light like poetic justice reborn. Simone hugged her gently. "You've done the hard part. Now, just walk in like you already own the place." Maya smiled. "Because I do." Meanwhile, in the Whitmore office, Jonathan practiced his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said aloud, grinning at his reflection, "tonight we celebrate progress, inclusion, and opportunity for all." He chuckled under his breath. "Even the cleaning staff get to feel special tonight." His wife, Lillian, peeked in. "Jonathan, darling, what's that supposed to mean?" He waved her off. "Just humor, my dear. These people love a good story." If only he knew what story was waiting for him. By evening, the city pulsed with lights and luxury cars. Reporters lined the carpet, guests arriving in jewels and silk. The Whitmore Pavilion gleamed brighter than ever, unaware that its own foundation was about to crack. Maya's convoy rolled out from her estate in Harlem Heights, 5 vehicles, synchronized and silent. Inside the Rolls-Royce, she sat composed, hands folded, eyes calm. She didn't need to announce herself. The world would do that for her. Her assistant's voice came through the earpiece. "Dr. Bennett, are you ready?" Maya smiled faintly. "I've been ready for generations." The convoy turned the corner. The lights of the pavilion reflected against the Rolls' mirror-black hood. Cameras began to flash even before the doors opened. And when Maya stepped out in her royal gown, diamonds glinting like starlight, the world gasped, exactly as she had planned. Tonight, truth was going to take the stage. The chandeliers of the Whitmore Pavilion glittered like constellations suspended over polished marble. Guests filled the grand hall, CEOs, senators, socialites, all dressed in silver and gold, their laughter echoing against the dome. Cameras flashed, capturing what was meant to be Jonathan Whitmore's night of triumph. Then, the doors opened. Every head turned. Maya Jordan Bennett stepped inside, framed by the glow of the entryway, every inch of her radiating quiet command. Her purple gown swept across the floor like a tide reclaiming its shore. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then murmurs rose, confused, awed, and electrified. Jonathan froze mid-conversation, his champagne glass trembling in his hand. "What in God's name?" he whispered. His wife turned toward the entrance, eyes narrowing. "Jonathan, isn't that?" He swallowed hard. It can't be. But it was. The cleaning lady he'd invited to mock had arrived like royalty. Cameras pivoted instantly, reporters whispering to each other. Maya smiled, poised and calm, as flashes captured her from every angle. She didn't hurry. Each step was deliberate, as though she owned not just the room, but the world it represented. The host announced over the microphone, trying to recover, "A very unexpected guest has arrived, Dr. Maya Jordan Bennett, founder of Pinnacle Financial Technologies." The crowd gasped. The name alone sent ripples through the elite circle. Jonathan's face drained of color. "Dr. Bennett," he stammered under his breath. Maya reached the center of the ballroom, her gaze locking on his. "Good evening, Mr. Whitmore," she said, voice calm but edged with steel. "I appreciate the invitation." A murmur swept through the room. Cameras zoomed in. His guests looked from her to him, confusion spreading like wildfire. Jonathan forced a shaky laugh. Well, Dr. Bennett, what an unexpected pleasure." Maya tilted her head. "Unexpected, perhaps. But not uninvited." The words landed sharp and clean. She turned toward the crowd, her poise unshakable. "I believe tonight's gala is meant to celebrate empowerment and inclusion," she said evenly. "So it seems fitting to share a story, one about humility, humanity, and the blindness of privilege." The room fell silent. Jonathan stepped forward quickly. "That won't be necessary." She raised a hand, silencing him without looking. "4 months ago," she continued, "a woman took a job cleaning the floors of this very building. She scrubbed offices, emptied bins, and was called names that still echo through her memory. Not because she was unqualified, but because no one bothered to look at her closely enough to see who she really was." Cameras clicked. Guests leaned in. Maya's eyes locked on Jonathan's. One man, in particular, saw her as less than human. He mocked her accent, her skin, her presence. He invited her here tonight, not to honor her, but to humiliate her. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Jonathan's face reddened. "That's ridiculous, this is slander," he sputtered. Maya smiled faintly. "Is it? Because every word, every insult, every lie, was recorded." She nodded once toward the back of the room. Marcus, standing discreetly near the AV booth, tapped a button. The giant LED screen behind the stage flickered to life. Suddenly, Jonathan's voice filled the room. "You people should be grateful we even hire you." "Grateful, yes. That's the word. Some of them forget where they belong." Gasps erupted. Phones lifted to record. Jonathan's wife covered her mouth in shock. "Turn that off," Jonathan shouted, lunging toward the booth. But the damage was done. The recording continued, his laughter, his demeaning jokes, his disdain. When the final clip ended, silence fell like judgment. Maya faced him. "You told me once to remember my place, Mr. Whitmore." "I did. It's here, standing as the new majority shareholder of Whitmore Global Holdings." The audience erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Jonathan blinked, stunned. You what?" "I bought your company," Maya said evenly. "While you mocked me, I was finalizing the acquisition. As of midnight last night, Whitmore Global belongs to Pinnacle Technologies." The room exploded in chaos, flashbulbs, gasps, whispers turning into roars. Jonathan staggered backward, disbelief twisting his features. "You can't, this is impossible." Maya stepped closer, her expression calm and unyielding. "You wanted the cleaning lady on stage, Jonathan. Here she is, cleaning house." The crowd broke into applause, some hesitant, others thunderous. She turned toward the reporters. "Let this night remind us, power without respect is poison. True leadership isn't measured by how high you stand, but how you treat the ones who serve beside you." Jonathan stood motionless, his empire collapsing under the weight of his arrogance. Maya offered him one final look, neither hate nor pity, just truth. "Good evening, Mr. Whitmore." Then she turned, her gown sweeping the marble like a royal decree. As she exited the ballroom, flashbulbs followed her all the way to the door, the humiliated titan of industry left behind in stunned silence, his legacy rewritten in a single night. The night had barely ended when the world began to burn. By sunrise, every major news outlet was running the same story: billionaire exposed by his own cleaning lady, who turned out to be a billionaire herself. Clips of Maya's speech had already gone viral, her poised words cutting through arrogance like sunlight through fog. Social media exploded. Hashtag the cleaning lady CEO. Hashtag dignity over wealth. Hashtag Whitmore exposed. Millions watched the video of Jonathan's red face as Maya calmly said, "I bought your company." The moment became an instant classic, the embodiment of poetic justice. In the marble silence of his mansion the next morning, Jonathan sat slumped in his study, a tumbler of whiskey untouched beside him. The television played on mute, every channel dissecting his downfall. His phone buzzed endlessly, calls from lawyers, board members, his wife, reporters, but he couldn't bring himself to answer any of them. Constance Whitmore entered, elegant even in her quiet fury. "You made a fool of yourself," she said flatly. "And of me." He lifted his eyes, bloodshot. "Constance, she tricked me. Set me up." "She didn't have to trick you," she snapped. "You humiliated yourself. All she did was tell the truth." She turned for the door. "Our lawyers will be in touch. I'm leaving." When the door shut behind her, Jonathan felt something rare, silence that hurt. Meanwhile, across the city, Maya sat in a sunlit penthouse suite surrounded by her team. The air buzzed with quiet triumph and exhaustion. Screens displayed a dozen news outlets, her speech replaying again and again. She didn't smile much. The victory was righteous, but heavy. Rachel Silverstein, her attorney, was on her third phone call before breakfast. "The transfer of control has gone through. Whitmore Global Holdings is now officially under Pinnacle Technologies, she confirmed. You own 52% of everything. Simone Charles scrolled through social media on her tablet. Half the country wants to work for you now, she said, grinning. The other half is writing think pieces about how you exposed modern slavery in the boardroom. Maya exhaled softly, her tone calm but weighted. Good. But let's make sure this doesn't just become a spectacle. Real change, that's the point. James Mitchell nodded. The staff from Whitmore's offices are already reaching out. Carmen, Kwame, Eileen, David, they want to see you. They're crying, Maya. They said they watched you speak and felt seen for the first time in years. Maya's eyes softened. Then we did what we came to do. The phone rang again, her publicist. CNN wants you on air. So does Forbes. The New York Times wants an exclusive. Maya hesitated, then shook her head. Not yet. Let them talk first. I'll speak when there's something worth saying. She turned toward the window, the city glittering below her. Justice isn't the same as revenge, she murmured. Revenge ends with a headline. Justice changes the system. Across town, in the boardrooms of Whitmore Global, panic reigned. Executives scrambled to realign their loyalties. Richard Ashford, Jonathan's oldest ally, sat stone-faced as the company's PR department tried to contain the inferno. It's over, he said finally. She's the majority shareholder. The best we can do now is survive. Outside the building, protesters had gathered, workers, activists, everyday people holding signs. Respect workers. Dignity isn't charity. We are all Maya. Camera crews swarmed the glass doors. Everyone wanted a quote, a glimpse, a soundbite. But Maya didn't appear that day. She let the world sit with what it had seen, the image of a powerful man undone by his own contempt. Jonathan, meanwhile, spiraled deeper into isolation. His calls went unanswered. Sponsors withdrew. The senator he'd donated to issued a statement condemning all forms of workplace discrimination. The hypocrisy made him sick, but he couldn't fight it. His empire had collapsed in a single night, not because she'd shouted, but because she had spoken truthfully. By the third day, Maya finally broke her silence. She appeared on a live stream from her headquarters, no theatrics, no glitz, just calm authority. Her message was direct. This story isn't about me, she said. It's about everyone who's ever been overlooked, undervalued, or disrespected because someone assumed they were less. Every janitor, housekeeper, driver, or assistant who's been treated like furniture in the room, this victory is yours. We're implementing a new initiative called the Bennett Standard, a model for workplace dignity. Every employee, from the CEO to the cleaning staff, will earn a living wage, access benefits, and be treated with respect. I encourage every major corporation to do the same. The comments section exploded with support. CEOs began issuing statements of solidarity. Politicians quoted her words in speeches. Activists called her the conscience of corporate America. And yet, for all the attention, Maya remained composed. In private, she still thought of her grandmother, how she'd come home with sore hands and quiet eyes, cleaning other people's homes just to keep her own. Maya had done this for her, for every woman who had scrubbed, folded, and served unseen. When the live stream ended, her phone pinged. It was a message from Carmen. Miss Maya, I cried all night. You made them see us. Thank you. Maya smiled softly, tears stinging her eyes. No, she whispered. Thank you for holding the line until I got here. That night, the city skyline shimmered with new meaning. The world hadn't just witnessed a scandal, it had witnessed a reckoning. A new measure of power, built not on money, but on respect. It was almost 2 weeks before Jonathan Whitmore requested to see her. The message came through formal channels. His assistant, clearly uncomfortable, had called Rachel Silverstein first. Mr. Whitmore is asking for a private meeting, she said, voice trembling slightly. No press. No lawyers. Just him and Miss Bennett. Maya had expected this. Guilt, after all, eventually clawed its way through even the thickest armor of pride. Still, she sat in silence for a long time before replying. "Tell him," she said, "I'll come. But on my terms." The meeting took place in the same glass conference room where it had all begun, the Whitmore Global Boardroom. But this time, everything was different. The plaque outside the door now read Pinnacle Holdings, and the staff who once averted their gaze now stood taller, greeting her with respect. Even the air felt changed, lighter, as though the building itself had exhaled. When Maya entered, Jonathan was already there. He looked smaller somehow, his posture hunched, his tailored suit hanging loose on his frame. The arrogance that once filled the room like smoke was gone. In its place was exhaustion, and something that looked like shame. "Maya," he said quietly, standing. She didn't offer her hand. "Mr. Whitmore." He gave a humorless laugh. "I suppose I deserve that." She took a seat at the head of the table, his old seat. He noticed, and for a flicker of a moment, his jaw tightened, the old pride twitching to life before dying again. "I didn't expect you'd actually come," he said. "Most people would have celebrated and moved on." "I don't celebrate humiliation," Maya replied. "Not even yours." He looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time without the lens of power between them. "You meant what you said, didn't you? About justice, not revenge." "Yes," she said simply. "I meant every word." He nodded slowly, his hands twisting together on the table. "Then I owe you an apology. A real one." She said nothing. He continued. "I was raised to believe money meant superiority. That people who worked for me existed to serve me. And when I saw you, someone I thought was beneath me, standing in my world, I reacted like a coward. I mocked what I didn't understand. I can't undo that, but I can tell you I see it now." Maya studied him carefully. His words weren't smooth like a rehearsed PR statement, they stumbled, halting, raw. "Why tell me this now?" she asked. "Because for the first time in my life," he said, "nobody's afraid of me. And I finally understand how dangerous it is when people are." A long silence stretched between them. Outside, the hum of the city pulsed through the glass walls, steady, alive, indifferent. Maya leaned forward slightly. "What do you want, Jonathan?" He hesitated. "To make amends, I suppose. If that's even possible. I lost everything, my company, my marriage, my reputation, but maybe I can at least do something right before it's too late." Her expression softened, but only slightly. "Redemption isn't something you claim. It's something you earn." "I know." He swallowed. "I was thinking, perhaps I could work with your foundation. Help fund some of those workplace programs you're implementing." Quietly. Quietly? Maya raised an eyebrow. "You want to help without accountability?" He flinched. "I just don't want it to look like I'm trying to buy forgiveness." "Then don't," she said. "If you mean what you say, let your actions speak for you. But understand something, Jonathan, what you did to me wasn't personal. It was systemic. You just happened to be its face." He nodded, absorbing the blow. "Then let me help dismantle it." For the first time, Maya's voice softened. "You really think you can change?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'm willing to try. And I know now that trying isn't about saving face, it's about facing what I became." Maya stood. "Then start there." She gathered her things and moved toward the door. As her hand touched the handle, Jonathan's voice stopped her. "Maya," he said quietly. "I used to think power meant control. But you showed me it can mean integrity." She looked back at him, the faintest hint of a smile touching her lips. "Power means responsibility," she said. "You just forgot." And with that, she left him in the conference room, alone again, but this time, it wasn't punishment. It was reflection. Outside, sunlight streamed through the lobby windows. Employees passed her with genuine smiles, no longer fearful but inspired. The energy in the building had changed, hope replacing hierarchy, empathy replacing entitlement. As she stepped into her car, Simone greeted her with a grin. "How did it go?" Maya glanced once more at the tower behind them. "He's learning," she said. Slowly. Simone nodded. "Do you think he'll change?" "I don't know," Maya replied, her voice calm, resolute. "But the world already has." The car pulled away, and behind them, the gleaming glass of Whitmore, no, Pinnacle, reflected the morning sun like a mirror. For once, it wasn't reflecting arrogance. It was reflecting transformation. 6 months later, the world that had once mocked Maya Bennett now looked to her for guidance. Under her leadership, Pinnacle Holdings became the prototype for corporate transformation. What began as a single act of justice evolved into a global movement. Across every division, policies changed: equitable pay, mentorship for low-level staff, scholarship programs for their children, transparent hiring, and empathy-driven management. Maya didn't just take over a company, she rebuilt the culture from its core. At first, many had doubted it would work. Investors whispered about idealism and unsustainable reform. Yet within months, Pinnacle's productivity soared. Employee satisfaction tripled. Innovation bloomed from places no one expected: janitors suggesting logistics improvements, cafeteria staff designing efficient recycling programs, clerks leading diversity committees. The message was clear: when people feel seen, they create miracles. Maya stood in the same conference room one morning, now redesigned with open glass panels, sunlight pouring in. On the wall behind her was a new plaque. The Bennett Standard: lead with dignity. Act with purpose. Build with empathy. She was preparing for the quarterly address, a live stream that would reach millions. Simone reviewed notes beside her, while Rachel managed media requests. Maya adjusted her bracelet, a simple silver band that had belonged to her grandmother. It reminded her that power, at its truest form, was service. "Ready?" Simone asked. Maya nodded. "Let's remind them why we started." The broadcast began. Her voice was calm, steady, confident. 6 months ago, we proved that dignity and success are not opposites, she said. We proved that compassion is not a weakness, it's a force multiplier. The Bennett Standard isn't about charity. It's about humanity. She paused, her gaze unwavering. To every business leader watching, you don't have to exploit people to prosper. You just have to listen to them. When the stream ended, applause filled the room, not the forced kind of corporate events, but genuine pride. Even veteran executives wiped their eyes. Outside the building, a small crowd of employees had gathered, cheering. Meanwhile, across town, Jonathan Whitmore watched the speech from a modest office, one that bore no trace of the marble or grandeur he once bathed in. After the scandal, he'd sold most of his assets, repaid debts, and quietly started working with a nonprofit Maya had funded, the Dignity Project, which provided career training and business grants for service workers. He wasn't the face of it, he'd refused that, but he spent his days mentoring young entrepreneurs who reminded him of the person he might have been if arrogance hadn't blinded him. That afternoon, Maya received a small envelope in the mail. No signature, no logo, just her name written neatly in blue ink. Inside was a letter. Maya. I wanted to thank you, not for forgiving me, but for not destroying me when you could have. You forced me to face the man I'd become. I'm learning, one day at a time, how to build something real, without the lies, without the masks. If you ever need help with the Dignity Project, I'm here. No spotlight. No ego. Just work. Jonathan. Maya smiled faintly. She tucked the letter into her notebook and whispered, "Good." Weeks later, she made an unannounced visit to one of Pinnacle's training centers on the outskirts of the city. The facility was buzzing with life, former cleaners, drivers, and assistants learning coding, management, and business strategy. They greeted her not with awe, but with warmth. Carmen, now the head of staff relations, hugged her tightly. We're expanding into 3 new cities, Miss Maya. All modeled after your blueprint. Maya laughed softly. Our blueprint, she corrected. As she toured the facility, she saw something remarkable: people who once worked invisible jobs now mentoring others, teaching leadership through humility. It wasn't charity, it was transformation. When the visit ended, Maya stepped outside into the golden dusk. Her driver opened the door, but she lingered a moment, gazing at the skyline. Somewhere in that sprawling city, Jonathan was likely ending another quiet day, learning humility as she once learned perseverance. The symmetry of it all wasn't lost on her. Simone joined her, holding a tablet. "You're trending again," she said. "Global Times just called you the CEO who changed capitalism." Maya smiled faintly. Then maybe capitalism needed changing. Simone chuckled. "You never stop, do you?" "I can't," Maya replied. "There's still too much to fix." The car door closed softly behind her, and as they drove into the evening, the city glimmered with something new, not just wealth or power, but conscience. Her mission had outgrown her, becoming a living movement carried by countless others. Back in her office that night, Maya placed her grandmother's photo beside the plaque bearing her company's new motto. "We did it," she whispered. "But we're not done." And for the first time since her journey began, she allowed herself to rest, not because the battle was over, but because she knew she'd changed the battlefield itself. A year later, the Bennett Standard had become more than a company policy, it had become a cultural shift. What began as one woman's personal reckoning had sparked a movement that spread far beyond corporate boardrooms. Schools, hospitals, small businesses, and even government institutions began adopting her model: dignity as a baseline, not a luxury. At international summits, Maya Bennett's name was invoked as shorthand for moral leadership. Headlines no longer described her as the billionaire who exposed another billionaire, but as the architect of ethical capitalism. But for Maya, the legacy wasn't about the titles. It was about the ripple effect, the quiet revolutions taking root in places she'd never stepped foot in. One such place was a small town in rural Georgia, where a local grocery chain adopted the Bennett Standard. The owner, a wiry man named Henry Cole, implemented paid family leave and profit sharing. Within months, his employees' morale soared. When asked why, he simply said, "Because I watched Maya Bennett prove that doing right pays back tenfold." In Kenya, a startup founded by a young woman named Njeri cited Maya's story as its inspiration. "She showed us that respect scales," Njeri said in an interview. "We don't need to exploit to excel." The world was changing, not through decrees, but through example. At Pinnacle's headquarters, the mood was one of quiet purpose. The building had become a living symbol of the new era: open floors, collaborative workspaces, and leadership training for all. Maya's office remained simple: a single desk, 2 chairs, and her grandmother's photograph. Simone entered, carrying a thick report. "You might want to see this," she said, grinning. "UNESCO just nominated you for the Global Humanitarian Award." Maya blinked, genuinely surprised. "For running a company?" "For redefining what a company can be," Simone replied. "They said your model's being studied in business schools across 30 countries." Maya smiled faintly. "Good. That means it's no longer mine alone." Simone hesitated, then added, "You know, it's funny. People still think of you as the woman who exposed Jonathan Whitmore. But that's not your story anymore." Maya nodded softly. "It never was. He was just the mirror." Outside her window, the skyline shimmered with early morning light. The same city that once sneered now seemed to stand taller, as if realigned with a better rhythm. Later that month, Maya was invited to give a keynote at a global economic forum in Geneva. The crowd was electric: heads of state, CEOs, journalists, activists. Her words had weight now. They didn't just inspire, they reshaped policy. She stepped onto the stage to a standing ovation, but her first gesture was to quiet the crowd. "I stand here not as a symbol of success," she began, "but as a reminder of what happens when you refuse to accept disrespect as normal. I was underestimated, dismissed, and ridiculed, not because I lacked ability, but because I carried a broom instead of a briefcase. But I learned something powerful: dignity cannot be given. It must be recognized. The room was silent. If we can build companies around profit, we can build societies around purpose. If we can value productivity, we can also value people. The Bennett Standard is not a brand. It's a promise. Her closing words echoed through the hall long after she left the stage. After the event, a quiet figure waited by the exit, Jonathan Whitmore. He looked different now. Simpler clothes, no entourage. He smiled faintly when she noticed him. "You were brilliant," he said. "You always were." "Thank you," Maya replied, surprised to feel no tension, just peace. "I'm heading to Ghana next week," he said. "Helping set up microloan programs for former service workers. Thought you'd like to know." Maya's eyes softened. "I am proud of you, Jonathan." He nodded. "You gave me the chance to find something real. I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." They shook hands, not as enemies, not even as rivals, but as two people who had faced their reflection and chosen growth over pride. Months passed. The Bennett Foundation expanded into education and healthcare reform. Media outlets began referring to it as the human dignity movement. Young people all over the world wore wristbands engraved with her motto, "Respect is power." One evening, Maya visited her grandmother's old neighborhood, the one where she had first learned humility and endurance. The house had long been sold, but the street still smelled of rain and resilience. Children played on the corner, their laughter bright against the dusk. An older woman recognized her and waved. "Miss Bennett," she called. "You came home." Maya smiled, her voice warm. "Home never left me." As she stood beneath the lamplight, she realized her legacy wasn't about wealth or fame. It was about rebalancing the scale, showing that empathy could exist in places of power, that kindness could outlast cruelty, that one woman's integrity could rewrite an entire system. Her phone buzzed with a message, from Simone. UN just adopted the Bennett Standard as part of their Global Fair Work initiative. "It's official, Maya. You've changed the world." She looked up at the night sky, a soft smile playing at her lips. "No," she whispered, "we all did." And somewhere far away, in offices, factories, schools, and homes, people lived a little freer, stood a little taller, and spoke with a little more courage, because one woman had dared to challenge the hierarchy of worth. Her story had become more than a movement. It had become a mirror, reminding humanity of what it could be. 30 years later, the world bore the fingerprints of Maya Bennett. What began as a single act of defiance had grown into a global framework for fairness, embedded in schools, governments, and businesses alike. The Bennett Standard wasn't just a corporate guideline anymore, it was law in over 60 countries. Its three tenets, dignity, purpose, and empathy, had become the cornerstone of a new kind of global ethics. The skyline of New York had changed, but one building stood as a quiet reminder of where it all began. The Pinnacle Tower still shimmered, its lobby lined with plaques bearing the names of workers who had transformed the company through innovation and service. No titles, just names. Every employee, from janitor to executive, was honored equally. Inside, portraits hung along the hallway, not of CEOs, but of the people who had lived the standard. And in the center of the main atrium, beneath a skylight that bathed it in gold, stood a bronze statue of Maya Bennett, captured mid-step, a folder in one hand and a cleaning rag folded neatly in the other. The inscription read. She cleaned the floor, then raised the ceiling. Maya herself was gone now, having passed peacefully 5 years earlier at the age of 84. But her influence was more alive than ever. Every year on Bennett Day, people across the world dedicated acts of service to honor her vision, not charity, but compassion through equality. In Lagos, a school named the Bennett Academy for Leadership taught children to lead with humility. In Seoul, business students recited the Bennett Oath before graduation. I will lead with respect, build with conscience, and remember that power is borrowed, not owned. In Johannesburg, the city's mayor unveiled a new initiative, the Dignity Dividend, ensuring that all municipal employees received a living wage and democratic workplace representation. We are living in the world Maya imagined, she said. Let's keep earning it. At the Bennett Archives in Boston, a group of university students worked late one evening, curating holographic footage from Maya's lifetime. They were preparing a centennial documentary, The Woman Who Changed How We Work. One student, Layla, watched an old clip of Maya's first viral speech, the moment she had revealed her identity at the Whitmore wedding. Layla leaned forward, whispering, she didn't raise her voice once. Her mentor smiled. She didn't need to. Truth doesn't shout, it stands. Another student added, it's strange. People talk about her like a legend, but she looks so ordinary. That's the point, the mentor replied. She showed that ordinary people are extraordinary when they're treated with respect. Layla nodded slowly, absorbing it. Do you think we'll ever have another Maya Bennett? The mentor looked thoughtful. We don't need another. She made sure we'd all carry a piece of her. Elsewhere, in a quiet suburb outside Atlanta, an old man tended to his garden, roses, lavender, and sunflowers. His hands trembled slightly, but the care was precise. It was Jonathan Whitmore, long retired, his life now measured not in profits but in peace. He had spent his final decades mentoring young leaders through the Dignity Project, never taking credit, never seeking the spotlight. When people asked about Maya, his eyes always softened. She saved my soul, he would say simply. On his windowsill sat a framed letter, yellowed with time, Maya's handwritten note from years ago. Redemption isn't about being forgiven. It's about being useful again. He read it every morning before stepping into his garden, a ritual, a quiet thank you. In her hometown, the street where Maya once grew up had been renamed Bennett Avenue. Children ran past murals of her likeness painted on brick walls, beneath the words, "Lead with Heart." Every year, local families gathered for the Day of Dignity parade. Parents told their children the story, of the woman who started as a cleaner, who stood against cruelty not with anger, but with grace. And each time the tale was told, someone new was inspired to rise a little higher, speak a little braver. In the final scene of the documentary, the camera panned over the world, schools, offices, farms, factories, all connected by the principles she'd left behind. A narrator's voice read from Maya's final speech, recorded a year before her passing. We often ask what kind of world we're leaving our children. But the better question is, what kind of people are we preparing to inherit it? If they grow up believing that kindness is weakness, they will destroy each other. But if they grow up knowing that dignity is strength, they will rebuild everything we broke. That is my hope, not that they remember my name, but that they remember their worth. As the words faded, the screen showed the image of her statue, the bronze figure standing tall against a sunrise. In the reflection of the polished floor below it, the next generation of leaders walked by, diverse, determined, and kind. Maya's shadow fell across them like a blessing, silent, steady, eternal. Because she had proven something the world once doubted. That true power doesn't dominate. It elevates. Before you go, tell me where you're listening from. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.